Hi everybody, this is Brian Yearling. In this video we're going to take a look at formats of blogs in the classroom. Blogging can be quite a challenge when you first get started. It's a worthwhile challenge, it's an endeavor everybody should at least explore and figure out how it plays into their classroom. But when we first start to look at it, it may be difficult to think about where to go from there. So what we're going to do in this particular video is give you some formats. We're going to coach you up on how those formats can be used in the classroom, and ultimately we hope to give you some ideas about how to use blogs in your classroom. So generally speaking, there are three common blog formats that can be used in the classroom. There are lots of variations on this. There may even be other styles of blogs and blog formats out there, but these are three great starting points that might help you get started. The first is the teacher blog. The second is the class discussion blog, and the third is a student blog. Now let's take a look at what that means. So the first format we're going to look at is a teacher blog. In a teacher blog, really the focal point of this is really giving information out to students, parents, or whomever might be reading the blog. The focal point is not necessarily students writing in this case. It's really a delivery mechanism for the teacher to get information, ideas, that sort of thing out to students. So here in this example, you can see that we have a teacher. The teacher is the primary focus and the author of the blog. Each of these pink Post-it notes represents an individual post that the teacher has written. Here at the bottom, you can see that the students are all readers of this blog, and their primary purpose is just to get information out of the blog. A teacher might share things like what has happened in the classroom, might share some content-specific knowledge, might offer some reflections. But the real point is there isn't a lot of interaction that goes on in a blog of this type. It's truly just a way for a teacher to deliver information from the teacher to the students. And again, each of these serves as a post as we go. We're going to look at a second kind of blog, the class discussion blog. So let me get some of these out of the way so you can get the general concept of the idea here. When we look at something like this, we keep a very similar structure as we had before. The teacher is still the primary blogger in this case, but the focus of the blog has really changed. The teacher is writing individual posts, so we can see those represented here. Here the teacher's got 4 different posts. And the point of these posts is to present an idea, to propose a question to the students, but it's really to get the students thinking. Now, this varies from format 1, though, which is the teacher blog, because the real focal point is interaction. In this case, the teacher is posting the main idea, and the student's responsibility is to comment to that main idea. So now we've got 4 different students who've commented to this particular post. It's a way for the teacher to see the thinking that the students have. It's a way for the students to respond to each other. So the initial post got this student thinking. They wrote their comment. Those comments, along with the initial post, actually got this student thinking. And you can see an online discussion develops as a result of that. That continues throughout the year. Now, the real advantage to this is that you get all of your thinking in one common place, and it's probably the most high-leverage way to have students reading each other's work and sharing with one another. Of course, the limitation is that only one post or one person can create a post. We create those posts, generally 1 or 2 posts at a time, and so the flow of thinking can't really go in a lot of different directions. It's teacher-guided discussion, effectively, with a written response. So think about a classroom where you would pose a question and then students would respond back to you verbally. This is really the written version of that. We found that when students do this, they really can take off and have really authentic conversations, and they will go in different directions, but as a teacher, you're generally going to want to instruct students to come back to the main concept or the general idea of the original post. So that is format 2, and that's a class discussion. Another real advantage here is that the teacher isn't going to be chasing the thinking all over the internet. So in the next example we're going to give you, every student has their own blog, and that can be a lot of websites to remember, links to click, and also some disconnectedness. Here, the real value is that every student is connected to the same ongoing place. It's also a single place where teachers can send parents, guest bloggers, guest readers to see the thinking of their class. So this is format to the class discussion blog, a single blog with posts by one single teacher, and the comments are the responsibility of the students. So once again, let's look at those three common blog formats and just talk about some of the highlights and low points of each. So when we look at a teacher blog, one of the key pieces is it's a great intro to any teacher who's new to blogging. You can really get your feet under you, begin to understand what blogs are, how they work. So this is a great entry point. Of course, the low point to this is the fact that a teacher blog is just one-way communication. While you could have your students start to comment on those, really that's not the point. The point is for a teacher to just get information out to students. So if you're just looking to push information to students and parents, a teacher blog might be the great place to go. Also a great place if you're just getting started. Next, we look at that class discussion. So what's really nice about this is it's a nice step up from just the introduction to blogging, because now you're asking for feedback from students. So we have students involved, and they get to share their thinking. It's also really nice because there's a single place where we can go to get the information we need. And it really keeps it organized and not very confusing for you or your audience. So great high points for those class discussion pieces. One of the low points, though, is that the ideas can't really go in a variety of directions. There's really a single pathway, and that's generally determined by the teacher. We can't go all over the place. Of course, the other thing is there's no student ownership. It really is the teacher's decision what it looks like and what they talk about and what the posts are all about. So that can sometimes be a drawback for some students. The third, of course, is the student blog. Here we get a lot of student ownership. They get to choose what it looks like, they get to choose their web address, they get to choose the posts that they write about. And there is still some commenting that happens, which is valuable. And they can also take it in many directions. It's their determination what they want to write about for the day. So those are the three high points there. Of course, the low point there is it can be a little bit more confusing because it's spread all over the place. You have many different URLs to remember, lots of different places for students to go, which may mean fewer readers, at least from the perspective of the readers in your own classroom, which generally speaking with student bloggers is your primary audience, the other students in the class. And so with fewer readers, there's less exposure to their writing, there's less opportunity for commenting, there's less opportunity to get inspired by the comments that you receive, and so that can be one of the downfalls of this. All three of these are great pieces to get started with blogging. Some, of course, are really better for the introduction. Some are better for the more advanced blogger, but you have to think about what the purpose is for your particular use in your classroom, and then choose a format that goes from that point forward. One last thing that I'll recommend about blogging and the blog formats that you choose in your classroom is consistency. Blogging only takes off if this becomes a part of what you do every day in your classroom or every week in your classroom with some consistency. If you blog from time to time, meaning once a month here, once in a while there, and there's no consistency to it, you don't develop an online community, you don't develop good habits around blogging, and it becomes something that becomes very flat in your classroom. So the big key that you want to take away is be consistent with your blogging. Stick to it. It's hard to determine if something like this works on just a first or second try. You really need to give it some time to develop in your classroom. In the third format, we have student blogs. This is a little bit different structure. Before, we had a single teacher responsible for creating or setting up the blog, and then creating the post for that blog. In this format, you can see that every student has their own blog. So student A has gone out and created the green blog, and student B has created the yellow blog, and student C has created the pink blog, and so on. Now the teacher becomes the primary reader of each of these blogs, and this is where that disconnectedness can start to happen. The teacher has to go and click on this link and check that post, and check that post, and check that post, and check that post. So there's a little bit more running around for the teacher as they are working to see all the different students' posts. There are some ways we can manage that. Just even with a common page with all the links in one place can be really helpful. What is advantageous about this, though, is that student A can have their own look and feel to the blog and give it some of its own style and unique characteristics. Student B can have an entirely different look and feel, different layout, different design, which gives each student more ownership over the blog. It also allows them to reflect a little bit more generally. It allows them to take the blog or the writing that they're doing in different directions, customize it to different audiences, because they truly take ownership of the blog, and the teacher becomes a reader of that blog. Now, what's nice about this blog as well, though, is it's not just one way students writing and everybody else reading. Teachers, through careful instruction, can encourage students to read those blogs and comment on each other's blogs. So here, different students are going through and they're reading certain blog posts from their friends and classmates, and they're starting to respond to them. The teacher also has the same ability, though. So these are the teacher's different posts. While this can look a little bit overwhelming at first, it's important to remember that it's not critical that a teacher or classmates respond to every single post that a student writes. Responses and comments are something that really motivates students to write more. It gives them the fuel they need to write another post after that. So it's important to go in and check on the posts, to read them from time to time, to comment on them, to challenge students. But it's not critical that every single post gets a comment. In fact, sometimes the lack of a post can really be the lack of a comment is really what will drive a student to write maybe a little bit better, to go back and revise that. So if you really want to encourage students to write for a real-world audience, giving them a generic response on every single post may not be the best practice here.